You're listening to Candidate Conversations on the WIDU Radio Network. I'm your host, Jay Reinstein, and today I have with me Brenee Orozco, running for District Court Judge Seat, District 14, Seat 5. Welcome to WIDU and Candidate Conversations.
Thank you.
Great to have you here.
Great to be here.
And I'm glad I said the name right. So being a judge, that's important stuff,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
So what in your professional and personal background best prepares you to have a seat on the court?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for pronouncing my name correctly.
Oh.
However, it would have been okay if you didn't. I'm
Yes.
okay with people not being able to roll that R and saying Orozco or Orozco, as
Yeah.
I will often do it. As it relates to what best prepares me, I would start with personal, because
Yeah.
before I was an attorney, I was I was born into the military. My father was in the Air Force, and I was a soldier in the Army. And I have been married to my husband now 31 years, but prior to obtaining my law degree and my law
a long
license,
time.
I'd been married to my husband for quite some time. And he retired from the Army after 23 years, which
Thank
during
you for
that time,
both of your service.
thank you.
Appreciate that.
During that time, and as growing up as a child, I was around a lot of different cultures and a lot of different ideas of how life may work,
Right.
and how people may think. And then subsequent to that, I went to law school. And of course, prior to going to law school, you have to get your undergrad degree.
Right.
And in my undergrad degree, it was history. And looking again at how the world was working and
Sure.
some things that we all have to deal with because of some decisions that were made
Right.
by others before we ever got here. And my degree in history, and then went on to law school.
Yeah.
During which time my husband was stationed in Korea.
Oh, wow.
And I had to go to law school as a quote unquote single mother because we had 2 children at the time.
Got it.
And those girls often had to come to class with me when school was not in session,
Right.
but law school was in session.
Right.
And then there were
a
times,
challenge.
absolutely. And then there were times that I'd have to get out of school and rush to try to make it to an event for one of the children so that the
Right.
child would know,
Yeah.
Mom's here. So I understand the struggle of family, okay,
Right.
the family dynamic of the single parent.
Yeah.
And of course, being married and the ups and downs that come with that. And I love this guy. I understand the complexities that come with marriage and other relationships.
Right.
So then, of course, professionally, I was licensed in 2008, and from 2008 to 2023, I spent 15 years mostly in the abuse, neglect, and dependency courtroom, where my advocacy, although for my client, who usually was a parent who, for whatever reason, had a child that was in foster care, whether it was mental health problems,
It's tough.
whether it was mental health, whether it was drug use, whatever the reason was
Yeah.
that caused the child's safety to be of such concern that the court would remove the child from the parents,
Right.
I always advocated to have the children with family whenever possible.
Right.
And my position was, and looking at some of the cases, was where family might not have been determined to have reasonable, adequate, resources.
Got it.
Well, what is resources? Resources might be the neighbor next door who has that loaf of bread that the family couldn't afford.
right.
Resources might be the cousin down the street who can provide the transportation. Resources in an emergency can be like any resource that you or I or anyone who has a car and $1 million a year. Call 911.
Yeah, that's
Send
right.
EMS out.
Right,
They don't
right,
have to
right.
have a car.
Right.
So my thing was,
Interesting.
while we could give foster care parents resources such as food stamps, and some foster care parents could get food stamps, or electric bill assistance, because some of them could do that.
Right.
If we were going to say that the family didn't have adequate resources, then give them those same resources.
Yeah, right.
That was
right.
always my advocacy.
Makes sense.
And again, even though I didn't represent the children, my concern was, as a human being who was once a child,
Right.
what is the impact that what we are doing having on those children's grandchildren?
Yeah.
Because if we might be getting it wrong, no matter how hard we are trying not to, how much we may love, how much compassion we may have,
Yeah.
how much zeal we may have in our decisions, if we're getting it wrong, what type of mental health problems are we setting them up to have as far as trauma?
Yeah.
Okay? As far as children who might have disorders from, and just give me a second here,
Yeah.
adjustment disorders, okay? And what if we're setting that up for them and they have a hard time making connections with others because
Right.
they've been moved here and there and didn't know how long they were going to be able to stay in a place
Yeah.
that they'd come to love?
Right.
What do we do when they become parents and they may not know how to bond with their own
Oh,
children?
yeah. That's a problem.
So then when they are not able to bond with their own children, what do their children learn?
Yeah.
And so then those grandchildren may have that. Always thinking that way.
Down the road, right.
So when you say professionally, that's that professional experience.
Got it.
Moreover, and it's a little bit of a mix, but that is
Sure.
certainly the professional experience. I also practiced custody cases. Same thing, best interest of the child. That's the polar star by which we are guided.
Absolutely.
Like the wise men following the North Star, right? The polar star by which we are guided is the best interest of the child.
Right.
Not what I want, not what I think,
That's right.
but really the best interest of the child that might require some give and take. This parent might want this parent might want that, but maybe we need to have a little come into the center to
Right.
where that's nice, that's what you want, and that's what you want, but really how does that impact the child?
Yeah.
And likewise with
And that's the focus, the child.
with the child support cases, because I would be appointed to represent people who weren't paying their child support. I'm not going to say they couldn't. I'm not going to say they wouldn't. My job was to represent individuals in child support cases.
Got it.
And so with that, I understand child support contempt. I also understand North Carolina General Statute 5A handles contempt. And that has also allowed me to be prepared. And not only did I practice in abuse, neglect, and dependency during the school bus to prison pipeline,
Yeah.
I once went with a wonderful organization to the Cumberland County School Board, who painstakingly drafted a document that they wanted to discuss, and I was there to support that, as to stop the school bus to prison
Yeah.
pipeline.
Was
And
it successful, that advocacy?
Eventually.
Okay.
Eventually it was,
Yeah.
thanks to a lot of advocates.
Yeah.
But there was a time when we had that overlap between delinquency and that problem and abuse, neglect, and dependency and those issues.
Right.
And so during 2008 to 2023, those were my main focuses. I also handled some misdemeanor cases, understanding that the state, not the defendant, but the state has the burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person is guilty.
Yeah.
You know that if the state does not prove or sustain its burden, although a person may have done it,
Right.
doesn't mean that person's guilty.
Yeah.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
And that's important if I were to sit on the bench and be in courtroom 3A or any of the other district courtrooms where misdemeanors are handled.
Yeah.
I understand that. I understand that bail statutes, having had my limited time in criminal court, bail statutes need to be applied consistently,
Got it.
regardless of person's socioeconomic status. If a person owns $1 million and might buy a plane, but quite frankly is a recluse,
Right.
do I really need to
Yeah.
give him $1 million in bail? I mean, he's not going anywhere. He doesn't want to leave the house,
Right,
right?
right.
Whereas if there's a person who owns $10,000, but quite frankly just won't stay put, maybe.
Higher bail.
But what if that person had never even committed a crime, and that person has a family member who is willing to sign that person, quote unquote, sign that person out?
Right.
Or that person might, qualify for getting out on his own recognizance. Is bail really necessary when my understanding of the law is it isn't?
Yeah.
These are the things that I understand. And these are the things
that's important.
Professionally and personally, I think, come together based on my understanding.
Let me ask you, and I think it sort of leads to this. You know, judges must remain impartial, even in some of those high-profile cases. How do you ensure that families or fairness for every person who appears in your courtroom? How do you ensure that fairness?
By just doing it. You just are impartial. The judge is not supposed to be that third attorney in the courtroom.
That's right.
Although that judge is an attorney, that is not the position that the people elected. The people said, we want someone who's going to represent impartiality. And based on the people's vote, that's what I would bring. What would I want if I were in that courtroom? Do I want my side heard as well as their side? Naturally. So that's what they would get. Impartiality. It's important. It belongs in the courtroom.
Great, thank you. Again, we're talking to Brenee Orozco. She is running for, in District 4 as county judge, seat 5. What do you think is the most important role a county judge plays in maintaining public trust in our community? How do you maintain that trust being a judge?
By being fair, by being impartial, by avoiding even the appearance of impropriety, doing his or her best to do that, being reasonable at all times, being compassionate but always tempered with reasonableness, being quote unquote zealous but always tempered with reasonableness. You know, at one point, the rules of professional conduct, and in fact, I'm sure they still do in North Carolina, I frequently visit them, that we have to be zealous advocates. Well, in one of my trainings, I learned that the American Bar Association, if they haven't already, was contemplating removing the term zealous, and we should be reasonable. And if they haven't, then I'm definitely a proponent of doing that, because sometimes being a zealous advocate can be overbearing for other people who may not understand, and it may cause confusion. I know I used to be accused of believing anything my client said, but I didn't. I just believed that my client had a right to representation, reasonable representation, which most of my clients would be able to say behind closed doors that's what they were getting, but no one would know in the courtroom that it wasn't just zeal because I believed everything my client said. They had a voice, I was their voice, and it was going to be heard.
Yeah. So there's very heavy caseloads in a lot of these communities. In Cumberland County, I know there's a heavy caseload. What could you do as a judge to potentially improve efficiency in the courts?
I think the calendar call where everyone, of course, would be invited, and everyone is currently invited. I mean, it's the court, right?
Right.
But where everyone avails themselves of the opportunity to come in, let the court know this is how much time I believe that, and these are the things that take place now, but continuing that, these are the things that we want to address, and just discouraging unreasonable continuances. I have a person right now in one of my condemnation cases. Ms. Orozco, I'm going in for a surgery. There's no way that I'm going to object. There's none. Well, Ms. Orozco, tomorrow's my birthday. Oh, I'm objecting. If I'm the judge, I'm objecting. So it comes with case-by-case scenarios, reasonableness. If the parties agree, and they understand that it may cause them detriment, that's one thing, and we can continue the case out. If there's a person who's got reasons why it shouldn't be, then that person's going to be heard. And in fairness, that will be considered. Sometimes that person may not be able to get that continuance, or a person may not be able to get a continuance, and sometimes over that another person's objection, there may be a continuance. But the idea is to take the people's business and handle it as efficiently, reasonably, respectfully, so that they don't have the added anxiety They don't have the added financial loss from constantly having to return to court. And respectfully, the financial loss, the anxiety combined, trying to find a place to park.
Yeah, right. Right. Parking is an issue. So why should folks on March 3rd vote for Brenee Orozco for District 14, Seat 5 judge? Why should they vote for you?
Well, I believe they should vote for me if they also agree that the courts need more fairness. We need to take a stand against domestic violence, support those who protect children from abuse while preserving family bonds where possible, that bail statutes need to be consistently followed and applied regardless of socioeconomic status, that mental health is a factor to be given due and respectful consideration in all of the decisions that are made, that the courts belong to the people, and that regardless of whether they are a party to the case or a witness to the case, the people should be in the courtroom reviewing what's happening. We should have integrity, patience, respect for all, regardless of race, sex, or socioeconomic status. We should protect the children's fundamental right of education and a teacher's right to safely teach. And I believe that if a person agrees with me, that person should vote for me, because it's not about Brenee Orozco, it's about that person. Jay, it's not about me, it's about you.
There you go. Well, thank you so much again. We've been talking to Brenee Orozco, running for District 14, Seat 5. She would be a judge. That's exciting stuff. Thank you for joining us on Candidate Conversations today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And you've been listening to Candidate Conversations on the WIDU Radio Network. Until next